Hey guys, I am Stuart and this is
Dr. Tiff,
otherwise known as Dr. T with her big weight belt on there. And welcome back to S2TV again. And I don't think we've done a video together, have we? This is the first one?
Yeah.
So
we actually go together.
So watch out, guys. But this is a really important video to watch. And Tiffany has a personal story. Actually, we both have a personal story to tell. And Tiffany, why don't you just give them a little rundown about kind of,
Sure.
what you've been going through and how long it's been happening on and on.
Well, I grew up an athlete. I played 3 sports, and back then you weren't specializing at 5 years old. So I'd go from soccer season to basketball to softball, and often I was playing 2 sports in a season. We didn't do any strength and conditioning. Back then it was just all kind of hitting the ground running. And so my senior year of high school, I ended up with a partially torn disc. Went through physical therapy for a year going into college. I had planned to play soccer at Richmond. And ever since then, my low back, my hip flexors, my whole core has really given me struggles. And every 6 months to a year, I'll have a little setback, whether it's from overtraining or just not having proper technique. And so, Stu's really been trying to help me to develop better structure and just get those muscles firing correctly. And so recently I've gotten this weight belt, and we're just trying to see how that maybe helps me be able to do a little bit more heavy lifting. So
Yeah, so I'm going to skip around a little bit, and I'm going to talk about like when I was first witnessing Tiffany have these back issues. So it would come up like once a year. You'd be fine, everything would be great, and then all of a sudden you're down in the back. And when we're talking down, we're talking huge back spasm, in tremendous pain. She can't exercise for a week. The last time it happened, we were actually, it was like 30 days that this went on. So this has been a couple of years going by. Now, what I began to do was to begin to try to diagnose what I felt was the overall issue, and then how do we begin to correct it. Now, it's been a tremendous exercise in kind of the futility of trying to figure out what was going on, and I made a classic mistake that athletic trainers, corrective exercise specialists, when we're beginning to evaluate a client, we have to be very open-minded to the possibility of where these injuries are coming from. We can't just come right in and say, oh, that's what it is, and call it a day. And I kind of did that. What I was looking at was her global stabilizers, specifically her glutes and psoas, the relationship between them. And what I could see in her movement patterns was when she would squat, just do some basic bodyweight squats. When she would squat, now turn from the side, do it again. You can see as she gets lower, go about halfway. Now continue to go down. What you'll see is that she starts to get into a little bit more back flexion. As a golden rule, especially with load, we never want the face or head to exceed the front of the toe. If it is, we are really into a lot of back flexion here, guys. And you can imagine if we loaded her with a bar right here, that's a super big issue. We never want the back to exceed 45 degrees. Now, every time she would drop down, what I would see is she'd have this excessive load, which is called upper cross syndrome. We've talked about quite a bit before. So I immediately am thinking that her glutes and psoas are not working properly. And we would pound it and pound it and pound it, come after the glutes, and we would do all this hip flexor flexibility training. But it kept on coming back. So what I shifted gears towards was the local stabilizer muscles. The muscles that are actually on the inside of her body. The diaphragm, the muscles of the pelvic floor, the internal oblique, the transverse abdominis. Think about the muscles in the body as like layers of an onion, starting on the inside around the spinal column and the pelvic floor, and actually moving out to bigger muscle groups that we see out here. So we have local stabilizers and global, all right? So what we started to look at was you're not firing on the inside, and what those muscles do is brace the core, the abdominals and the lower spine, and they create internal pressure so that we have spine stability while we're moving. So we went after a lot of different corrective exercise and things of that nature, and we still were kind of missing the boat. And she wanted to train with a little bit more load. So I said, you know what, let's take it another step. Let's get a belt so that you feel safe and secure while you're moving, and it'll also give you additional support. Now, do you want to talk to them a little bit about like putting that on and how it began to feel and what started to change for you almost immediately, and then I'll talk a little bit more about why.
So what I really noticed was, you know, when I was just free without the belt, there was a lot more, there was less mindfulness. I think for me, this just gives me that constant reminder about my posture and my structure, but I also feel it pressing into my abdomen, so it's forcing me to engage my abdomen versus typically, you know, again, you're just kind of loose in that midsection. So having something, and it's very tight, I mean, there's no room for movement here. It's almost like a corset. So it really keeps your posture and your structure tight.
Right, so it's got a multi-purpose, all right? Number one is we wear the belt and we've got a safety network there. It's providing stability that her muscles on the inside of her body are not providing. On the other side, it's also teaching her how to fire those muscles internally, right? Mm-hmm. You're learning how to brace and create that intra-abdominal pressure because the abdominals are pushing against that belt, especially under load. There's a Valsalva maneuver and it's engaging that core. So little at a time, it's actually a training tool. It's a safety network, but it's also a wonderful training tool. So while we're kind of talking about these things, I want to just spend a couple more minutes and go into some postural alignments, some considerations towards finding a neutral spine position and learning how to activate those muscles. So really quick, what I'm going to do with Tiff is turn her around, okay? So just set up a kind of a normal neutral stance. So what we're going to do, the first thing we're going to do is actually try to find what neutral spine position is, guys. So as we're weight training, it's very important that we're in neutral spine. We've got a bit of a lordotic curve. So we're tightening up, bracing, shoulders are back, okay? Rhomboids are engaged, eyes are always straight out. If we're looking down, guys, we're immediately changing the posture. 1 inch of rotation at the shoulder is going to equal back flexion, and we're into problems again. Now, the easiest, best way to learn a neutral spine position is to load the body in flexion and then extension and cause a little discomfort. So I'm going to put this kettlebell right in her chest. Now what I'm going to have her do is to lock out her hip and to lean forward and to look down. Hold right there. And you can just come from the side angle and look at it from the side angle. Okay? So she's just bending forward about 20 degrees. You feel those lower back muscles starting to activate? Mm-hmm. Okay? So what we want to do is teach her how to do it the wrong way. Okay? Flexion at the spine, guys, needs to be specifically either a good morning or a RDL. And the difference is where I'm loading the weight. And a good morning exercise is incredibly aggressive, which is what she was beginning to move into right there. The problem with that is I'm moving these erectors as primary movers. I'm firing them as a primary mover, not the stabilizer they were designed to be. I want to be in an axial load with a neutral spine, especially if I'm doing a low bar back squat or even a front squat. I want to find neutral. Now, lean back into hyperextension and find discomfort. Hold that. And you can tell she's got a little bit more range of motion there. Come back forward again. Let's go flexion. Hold that. Long enough that you can feel these muscles are starting to really start to burn and get fatigued. Go back into extension. Now, come back and find your neutral spine position and brace. Now what we're going to do from here, turn your toes out just a little bit. Keep your eyes up. So I want you to sit into a deep squat, firing from the hips first, flexing out, and not let your head pass the toes. Hold that vertical spine, come back out. So little by little, we'll start increasing her range of motion. But if she starts going any lower, keep going. If she gets any lower, you're going to start seeing flexion at the spine, and that is not what we're looking for, guys. We want to keep the load, the center of mass on top of the body, and little by little, we will load her slowly, starting with body weight, perfect squats. You find that balanced, neutral spine position, and then I brace and tighten, and then begin to move my hip. Stand all the way back up into extension. Boom. And practice, 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 guys. Anything to add?
Great teaching, Stu.
I'm Stu, and that is
Dr.
Dr. T. And thanks for watching, guys.